Welcome, and today we're going to look at how we can add an object tracker to our clip. Once you've got the object tracker running, we're then going to use it to attach text, animated text, icons and callouts to our objects, plus 2 pro tips to make our life a lot easier when we start to add trackers. So let's get started. Okay, so let's start by dragging a clip onto our timeline. And what we're going to do is we're not going to track an object on the whole clip. What we're going to do is something a little bit more real world. So what we're going to do is we're going to find a section of the clip and we're just going to track objects in that section. So I'm going to use the blade tool to cut out the section that I want to work on. So we'll do that first. Okay, so now we have our section that we can work on. So if we go and open up a new Fusion clip, well, we're going to have an issue, and the issue is, as you can see, there is an extra section at the beginning and the end of this clip. That's because we've just gone straight in to create a new Fusion clip. Now, it's not a big problem, but it is a little bit confusing, and as you get more advanced with Fusion, you will find that this becomes more and more problematic. So we don't want to do this. So let's go back. What we actually want to do is create ourselves a new compound clip. So we need to do that. So we'll select it. We'll give it a name that describes what the clip's going to do. In our case, tracked text. And then when we create it, you'll notice that your clip inherits that name on the timeline, which also means that as we add more and more clips for more and more complex editing, it's going to be a lot easier to see what's going on. So lots of benefits here. And as you can see, when we go back into the Fusion page, we no longer have those extra bits at each end. It's a lot easier to work with and it makes a lot more sense. So tip number 1. So now we're ready to add our tracker. So the first thing we need to do is find the tracker node. So we can do that using the shift and the space bar. And we can drag that on and add that node in. Now you'll notice that we have this new sort of activity area. So what we need to do is drag that onto the area of our object that we want to track. The important bit is to try and find an area that contrasts quite dramatically with the background. That way DaVinci will be able to find it and track it as we start to process all of the tracking points. So in our case, I'm going to pick the red tail light of this car because that has the greatest contrast. Now that we've added our tracker, you'll see that we've got a view panel, and for some reason DaVinci always defaults to black and white, so you can flick it to color by clicking on this icon here. So at this point, a lot of people will start to actually track their clip, and that may work, and in a lot of cases it probably will, but I know that this clip is not going to work if we do that. There's too much going on, there's too many blues going on, and we're just going to have a bad time. So that brings us to tip number 2, using a color corrector to help the tracker. So the first thing we need to do is add our color corrector onto our structure. So we'll do that first using the shift and the spacebar. Now once we've got the color corrector on, all we have to do is adjust it so that the area that we've marked as the tracking point stands out as much from the background as possible. So every clip will be different, you have to try it out. So we've got these sliders down here, and we can have a little play with it. Mine's straightforward, but as I said, it depends on the clip you're working with as to how much adjustment you'll need. You just need to play around a little bit. But the principle you remember is to get as much contrast between the background and your tracking point as possible. And that looks about right to me. That's pretty good contrast. So I think we're ready to go. So that's all the setup done. We're ready now to actually track our object. Ensure that you've got your tracker node selected. I'm going to have my playhead right at the beginning of the track, but you don't have to, and I'll show you how to get around that in a minute. And then we're ready to go. All we need to do is select the forward tracking button, click on it, and sit back and watch DaVinci track your object across the screen. While it's tracking, you can watch it to make sure that your tracking points don't wander off your image. Okay, and we're done. If your playhead wasn't in the middle of your track, sorry, at the beginning of your track, it was in the middle, then you could use the forward and back tracking buttons to track the whole clip. But we did that from the beginning, so that's okay. Once it's finished, what you'll see is all these little sort of white dots along each frame. Each one of those is a tracking point of your object. So we've got all our tracking points. We are done. Before we move on to the next step, we might as well remove the color corrector. It's done its job. It's helped the tracker work, so we don't need it anymore. So let's just remove that from our structure. Okay, so now let's get on to the next step, when we're going to start adding objects and text and icons to our tracker to get the effects working. So now we're ready for the fun bit. We're going to start by attaching a text node to our tracker, get it all set up. Once that's working, I'll show you how we can use it again and again to attach basically anything we want. So let's get started. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is drag a text node on. So we'll just do that first and connect it up. Now we need to add a transform node onto our timeline. So we'll see how that works in a second. So we'll just drag that on. Yeah, perfect. Okay, so that's now typing some text, the thing we wanted to see. So text, yeah, it's good. You'll notice you can't see anything yet. So what we need to do is change the mode on our tracker. We go to the operations and we change it to match mode. Now we can see our text. Finally, we just need to change the position so we can see it, and we're going to use the transform node for that. We'll just put it in a better position. Yep, that looks about good. Yeah, excellent. Now we don't want the text just appearing, so what we're going to do is, to make it a little bit nicer, we're going to actually keyframe in some fading in and fading out. So let's see how we do this. So I'm just going to put it to the beginning of the timeline, and I'm going to make it so it's completely zero size. Put a keyframe in, and then we're going to move over to frame number 10. That should be about right. So we'll just type in 10 there. You could just drag it along, but I like to use the numbers a bit more precise. We hit 10. And then what we'll do is we'll bring the size back up to what we want it to zoom into or fade up into. So again, we've got a keyframe that's already appeared, and that's that red dot there that's appeared. So that's sort of fading in. And now we need to do exactly the same at the end. So we go to the end. I think it's, yeah, 220 would be good. So just put 220 in. Okay, let's put another keyframe in. And then right to the very end. And then we'll put one final keyframe in to reduce the size down to 0 again, so it gives the effect of it fading away. And I think we're done. Excellent. So now it's time to test it out and see what it looks like. So we'll just scrub back to the beginning, just sort of before the effect, and hit the play. There we go. It's tracking nicely, and we should see it reduce down and disappear. Lovely. There we go. Text tracked against an object. So now we have our fusion clip working. It's going to be a very simple process just to take away the text node and replace it with anything we want. So let's do that. So the process for each example is going to be identical. We're going to create a copy of a fusion clip, disconnect the existing node, reset the transformation node, reconnect our new object, and demonstrate it. So what I'm going to do is going to turn the mic off, turn some music up, and then you can see how it works. So we've covered quite a lot in this video and I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to seeing you next time. Please subscribe and notify, leave comments and all that good stuff. I really appreciate it. Have a good day and see you very soon.